those are the sort of normal contributions for the month, or did they come from another account, Louise, or, you know, how this thing to be?
Yeah, I'm looking at that. I need to check into that because we just got this statement from them on pricing.
Okay.
Okay.
It's moving in the right direction anyway.
Yeah, I know we did not contribute anything unless it has to do with maturity or interest income.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to do with interest income, and it's an increase in the entire value of the account, so it didn't seem like it was maturity thing. Anyway, I didn't mean to trick it. Thank you.
Anything else? I don't know, we need a motion to approve this, I don't think so.
No.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to review and discuss the general fund budget, and at this stage of the game, I would like to have our interim city manager give a summary of this situation.
Thank you, Mayor. Has he been introduced to the public here?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if there is a new person in the room, Mike Kashwagi, I would like to introduce the group. Mike is helping us with our management organizational assessment in all areas except PD, and Mike's a professional engineer and is well known around the state, and has just been absolutely a terrific addition to our staff, so delighted to have Mike on board.
Mike, what's your last name?
It's Kashiwagi, K-A-S-H-I-W-A-G-I.
If I don't write it down, I won't remember.
Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't really follow what Mike's doing. Could one of you say a little bit more about that?
Well, and I'll let Mike follow up on this. I went to council and asked for 2 studies to be done in our, and it actually fits in really well with what we're going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. One was the police department, which Ed Flint is doing that assessment for us now. It's about halfway through. The other is everything else in the city that Mike is working on, and actually Mike may stay on with us for a longer term with the announcement of Duncan's retirement. So I'm talking to Mike about that, and I would be delighted if he would consider staying on with us and help us with some of these transitional issues. And Mike's already here most of the time anyway.
I would just like to say that John brought Ed and Mike on board because we recognized, you know, their budget as it's being presented was unacceptable. And so what we're looking at now is how can we modify the organizations so that we can have the minimum reduction in citizens' services and resident services, and are there efficiencies in the organizations, both in the police and in other parts of the town, that will, you know, there's no organization that's 100% efficient, at least in my opinion. And so therefore we got to look at our organization and say, if it's only 50% efficient, what can we do to make it 75% efficient? And I think that's one of the things Mike's working on.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Jim kind of set me up on this, and I appreciate that for the segue into this. Is that, you know, typically I would never submit a budget like this to you. It's really a matter of timing, that what you see, and maybe it is a good thing to do to go through the exercise, what you're seeing is a continuation of past year's budgets, doing business the same way, continuing the same policies in a stagnant revenue environment while all the costs around us are going up. I could never imagine submitting this to a finance committee or let alone the city council. It shows pretty clearly that going down the same business path that we are now, that somewhere in about 2015, we're structurally bankrupt, and in 2016, we're probably in receivership or becoming a part of unappropriated accounting. That certainly isn't the instructions that I've received from City Council, but it's premature of the final decisions about which way to go and what to fix. And I feel a little bit incumbent with Herb's comments to say that particularly with council's commitment to an in-house PD and the assignment of 60% of the parcel tax, which does show on this budget, that I'm operating on the premise that we'll continue until I hear otherwise from the council with an in-house police department that's properly staffed. We're down one police officer right now from the 17, so he's resigned to go to the San Francisco PD. We'll be replacing that person with, and it's a buyer's market right now, with, there's lots of really good cops out there that we might be able to select from. I'm going to suggest in this budget that we add one more officer. Ed Flint's optimal number for a minimum amount of overtime and a maximum amount of liability reduction by being properly staffed is 21 officers. I can't afford, or we can't afford to do that, but what I'm suggesting is working on a cash flow model that will be increasing the 17 to 18 right after the beginning of this fiscal year, and then take a look at our cash flow based on the COPS grant as to, potentially going to 19 and then stabilizing and see how that works out. I also agree that I want the public to know exactly where the parcel tax is allocated, and I have specific instructions to go 60-40 on that, so we want to make that as transparent as possible. And beyond that, maybe Jim wants to add things to that too. And oh, by the way, I think some of the issues that we've heard back on the parcel tax is what people voted on the parcel tax versus what the language of the parcel tax has a disconnect. And one of the things is by going the 60-40 split is it does free up some of the general fund to go back to city council and decide those items that weren't maybe in the one language could come back to council, and council have some discretion on parks issues and other things like that, that they could go ahead and make those allocations there, and that the other 40% will be going into the things that some people had a clearer thought of where it was to go in drainage and transportation, I believe. Just to clear that up, I think we get to the exact same place on CIP. And with that, I'm saying this is not a realistic budget. I've got to work with you all, I've got to work with council. It will be an entirely different business model in the non-PD side of the house to balance this budget.
What budget?
Our general,
This current budget.
well, our upcoming budget, I can't submit a budget with a known deficits of these magnitudes.
So when you're saying a known bet, you're talking about the 1,971,000? Or are you talking about the amount after the parcel reserve?
Well, that's the other thing is there's going to be a question when council pulls the trigger to go back and take a look at renewing the parcel tax. Because realistically, GAP says that Louise can't figure the parcel tax in after 13-14 because we don't know if it's going to repass. If it does not pass, we're looking at $2 million a year annual shortfall on our current business model. If you take the 1.1 million, which is 60%, the other 40%, remember, is going into capital, and that's why it doesn't show. The 60% is a 1.1 million reduction, and we still have a huge reduction. On top of that, we're burning off our operating reserves in building, which I'm going to strongly recommend that we not burn them off at that rate, because we don't have any kind of automation. We're busting at the seams with paper. This should be all digitally transformed. We're not including and this is something Mike is taking a look at, we're not operating efficiently, so we're doomed to continue to operate efficiently unless we stop that bleed and put some money back into a modern, well-computerized system.
Well, we have a separate report from consultants that deal with the reserves, if I recall, and they recommended that we maintain a reserve at least equal to the amount of work that is yet to be done on those permits that have been issued. Now, I don't know how big a reserve that would be, but I know they specifically talked about that, and I think they quantified it.
They did, they said $1 million.
$1 million?
And basically, what they told us is we had to reduce that reserve because otherwise we would get into trouble. People would be saying that we're charging too much on the building permits. So we had to reduce the reserve to $1 million. And so therefore, the building revenues at the moment are not supporting the building department. And therefore, when we get to $1 million, we may have to consider raising building figures so that we can support the building department. But it all depends, to a large extent, on what John is talking about, on the organizations in the building department. We may not. I would also like to say that on a balance sheet basis, at the present time, we are not reporting, or none of the other towns are reporting, unfunded liabilities. If we were putting the unfunded liabilities on the balance sheet at the moment, we would be already structurally bankrupt.
Well, no, but according to the balance sheet, we have only $1 million in there now. Is that right, Eric?
Can I ask for a clarification on your building department revenue? Is that based on current activity level in the building department?
Is it current or current estimated?
Current.
Yeah, it's based on currently what's happening in 2011. And the building official had upped that number to $917,000 for 2012. And he is taking a conservative approach, knowing the economy is still coming up and down, and he is increasing the revenue. So if you look at, if we can look at item number 5,
Yes.
if you go to page 1, which is the fund that they draw, and in the middle section, it has the building revenue history, right here for this. Okay, so in 2012, the building department is projecting a revenue of $917,000. And you want to know
But
why?
in 2011, it's over $1 million.
It's over $1 million because you have $138,000 is coming from commercial plan check in the schools. So we cannot forecast whether the school going to have a project every year. So
I don't see those numbers. What line are you on?
right,
First page.
first page
Okay.
of this session.
So if we back out the school projects, then we're looking at a slight increase for 12 over 11.
Right. And this is based on the building's officials' estimate that actual for 2011 may come in higher than what we put on here, but he's taking a conservative approach.
But our goal is to have the revenues and the expenses in the building department be equal.
Correct. And what we had talked about months ago was that once we had this kind of view, then we could recommend to the council going back and looking at permit fees.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, the point I wanted to make is, John, and it looks to me like you've taken $525,000 out of the building reserve, and I'm saying if you do that, then you're going to reduce the reserve down to $500,000. So I just want to, you said they recommended we maintain $1 million.
Right.
I'm just saying that his projections here will take half of that away.
Well, but in those reserves, there are reserves for things like new buildings. They're not all just for contingencies. I mean, some of these reserves are designated, is that correct?
The building department portion of the reserve for the new building is already taken out and put into a different fund. So this reserve that are for building is without that building fund in place.
Okay, all right.
But to add, to comment on Greg's comment, you're looking at $5 million from the audit report.
Right.
But if you would go to page 2 of this budget,
Yes.
if you look at the very bottom, is assuming that what the building department projecting for 2011 is true. They are going to need $528,000 in 2011, another $525,000 in 2012. If the actual come out to be exactly as what the building department is projecting, by the end of 2012, not only would they not have any building reserve, they are actually going to be $22,000 in the negative.
That's the point I was trying to make.
And of course, as everybody knows, we can't transfer those funds from the building reserve to the general fund. We're not allowed to.
Where are we transferring to? The building department per se?
Yeah, to stay in the building department.
Right, but I mean, you're in the general fund in the sense that it offsets the cost of the building department.
But they can only be used by the building.
Right,